I hope everybody is super safe in whatever cities you guys are in. So, the topic for today's discussion broadly is urban scenarios in 2040. I'm just going to read a small extract that was put in place by IIDA. So there is an obvious impact surpassing all levels from micro to macro when public buildings are taken into consideration. Given the current scenario, the gist of the topic of the discussion would be, where are urban spaces headed in 2040? What are the things which are currently amiss on an urban level, be it an institutional building or an urban incident, and how these spaces will be perceived in 2040? Are the guidelines formed by certain bodies fruitful on ground, or does the entire system need a transformation in order to cater to 90? Can the urban spaces afford to incline towards sustainability? I would like I would like, I mean, why don't you start with a general
Thank
comment
you.
on the.
That's probably the least qualified guy to start off. It has
It's not
its.
about qualification. I don't think it's about qualification today. It's
All right. No, thank you. Thank you. I've been thinking about this topic for the last week or so after we received the brief. And, when I look back at things that we enjoyed growing up, whether it was urban or institutional spaces, and I tried to sort of tick off things that mattered. And across all spaces that I enjoyed in an urban setting, the common themes were trees, water, combination of trees and water, and those really made it. So then I looked back at energy interventions that happened. So through college at FPA, the canteen used to be the best place to get educated in, not air conditioned, right next to the ring road. And yet I don't remember ever having a conversation that was disturbed by traffic noise, although we were barely 10 meters away from the main carriage road. Spaces that I've enjoyed in other countries, other places, including the so-called extremes of developed and underdeveloped. So you talk about urban spaces in Dubai, and I do believe that some great urban infrastructure work is being done in the Middle East. They're moving away from high energy to pedestrian and so on, and also in relatively underdeveloped places like Lagos, which has from a cash standpoint very little money, but very rich with in their culture, in their heritage, in climate. And then I look back at the city that I inhabit, Delhi. It's probably the only urban space that really all of us across age, gender, financial stratification have enjoyed would be the India Gate lawns and moving on to the Connaught Circus. I mean, those are really the urban spaces that you think of when you think of Delhi. I wish Chandni Chowk would come back. I haven't experienced it. Even from childhood, I remember it to be a very, very congested space. And the Flora Fountain was remembered as a bus stop, not as a fountain. And then if I try and put back what I enjoyed and what I thought in terms of trees and water, um, I think if we start planting today, it would in any case be 10 to 12 years before we can really enjoy the shade of those trees. And then I began to question, and why did we fail? I mean, why does Nehru Place not look like anything that we wanted it to be, or any of the others that are several examples? And I think that the big problem is that we do not have a consensus on how cars need to be parked. And this is very interesting because you dig 2 to 3 basements, you have a massive RCC structure that goes into the ground in your property, respecting certain artificial boundaries of setback, which have nothing to do with urbanism. And the first casualty is trees, because all you can grow on them are lightweight decorative trees that would never probably give you shade. And if we could arrive at an agreement at an urban level saying that we're not going to get away from cars all that quickly, maybe we would move from petrochemical driven engines or combustion engines to batteries, but we would still have private transport. Can we at least agree on how we're going to have a design for how we get these vehicles off the road and park them, and then create spaces which have plants to take root and water to be managed? I believe that if these two things became a leitmotif of design, and if we manage to engineer the removal of cars from roads to parking and parking onto roads in a standard format, so Swapnil, myself, you, Prema don't need to actually design individual basements with 16 different kinds of ramps and say, oh, mine is better than yours. With a standard design, you move the car off the road and you insist that your public space has water and trees. I believe that in the next 20, 30 years, the face of the city and the feel of the city will change. So that's my two bits of it.
So you feel that that the vehicles on the road are actually a very, very big problem today in terms of the urban iconography of the city, especially Delhi. And I didn't know you're from Delhi, so I'm also from Delhi. So, so that way, but yeah, okay.
Well, I wouldn't call it a problem. I mean, I'm not proud of it, but we have a joint family of 11 people, and there are 4 vehicles that we own. So therefore, I should be the last guy who's going to stand up and say, "Oh, we should do away with vehicles. We need them. That's why they're there." And for a middle class family to have 4 vehicles, there must have been a need, and none of them is a Porsche, by the way. So none of them is an aspirational purchase. Um, I don't think cars are a problem, or well, at an extreme level they are, but I do not think that we have the current wherewithal, or even in the next 10 years of our economic cycle, to think that we're going to have a public transport that is so manifest that you would do away with that. I believe acceptance of our current situation, knowing that there is a population, it is growing, it is younger, it requires vehicles because our urban design has gone wrong at a very drastic level. I mean, this whole idea that there is a commercial zone and there's a residential zone and you need to drive from one to the other is the start of the failure. But it's already happened. I mean, about 14 crores of us live in the city. So I believe that if we are able to manage it in a sympathetic way, that is a better chance of success than to say, oh, let's all try and figure out a way of getting rid of cars in the next 5 years. I really don't think, and I don't think that's going to happen even in 20 years or 30 years. And I believe that is probably what Swapnil was referring to when he said that let's not try and be too 40,000 foot. Let's try and get ideas that are actually implementable. So no, I do not believe that cars. I mean, at an extreme level, yes, but I don't think cars are a problem. I think how we manage them and how we demarcate our properties and the interface of properties is really where the problem lies.
So this is a very fundamental, topic you've picked up. Swapnil, what are your thoughts on this?
Just trying to figure out this whole mute unmute thing. um, you know, it's interesting, how Amin has put it together. And like I said earlier, I think when it comes to the whole sensibility of urban design and urbanism, there's too much of aura around that. I mean, a typical attitude with urban planning is that, oh, it's a planner's job, and it's a public policy thing that we need to sort of nail in terms of how we address our public realm and get to a better urbanism. To me, I think it's really a sensibility that begins, with every one of us. Because it affects everybody. It is not something in the domain of an architect or a master planner or an urban planner, but it is something that just goes across the strata of the society, and everybody needs to have a say in the matter. I think that's one of the underpinnings that we have as a professional practice as well, and what we learned is that planning cannot be done in isolation. I mean, there cannot be a broad-based directive, which says ban automobiles or, promote XYZ or whatever it is, because we are in a democracy and everybody needs to have a say in the matter, So we cannot say ban automobiles and public transit, just to give an example. But what we need to do, and when I say we as in people or government or whoever the powers to be, is that we need to provide the choices. I think a good urbanism, a good community, if I may say, is all about choices. That wherein, if I get a reliable, robust public transit, I may have a car, but still I'll prefer to take that, provided, it takes me in a comfortable way from point A to point B. So, the whole, like I said, so what that really brings to the fore is this whole issue about, engaging with everybody, in getting a consensus in what needs to happen. So as much as this topic, I mean, I was reading the brief and it does say that urban levels at an institutional level, hospitality level, or urban inserts, I think to me, it is far more fundamental than even that. Because if you look at a good, any town or village that we might like, and if you look at, try to understand the DNA of it, it is the ordinary houses, it is the ordinary buildings that make a good urbanism. What I call everyday architecture, or everyday, or architecture of housing and public buildings, because that is the basic brick equivalent, the DNA of what forms a good community. Whether it is a civic building like a temple or a church or a courthouse, or any of these interventions, yes, they are there, but they become like icons by themselves. So the whole idea of how do we create background buildings and architecture, that will build a sense of strong community, is something that needs to be talked about, that needs to be really encouraged right from our architecture days in our school and curriculum, because still we are trained, to be a prima donna, if I may say so. So there's that Harvard Rogue syndrome that is taught into the schools, and we all idolize to be wannabe Libeskins and Frank Gehry's and so on and so forth. But I think what really needs to happen is we really need to start talking about what is a background architecture. And a good example I can give, I mean, since Amin mentioned, and I have worked in an advisory role was working in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. Dubai I see as a strong poster child of what happens, when everybody starts to create iconic buildings. And nothing against iconic buildings. It's just that, every building by itself, seeks the attention and is Instagrammable, if I have to use it in current analogy. But what that creates is it creates a very disparate and distorted urbanism where every building is an object, an icon by itself. And today, the larger issue that we are grappling with in our country is the same thing, that we all create our own individual buildings, but the larger context that needs to bind it together seems to be completely missing. And one need not really rely on public policies and big guidelines. Yes, they do. I'll talk about it separately. They do play a very big role into how we shape up our urbanism. But, I mean, something at a campus level that Amin is doing, or something, at a individual building level that Cosima might be doing, there's a lot of sensibility of, urban design principles that we can integrate into our thought process. At the end of the day, it is all about people, I mean, how we create, an environment where people come together and, you just have a sense of vibrancy. I think that's what it finally boils down to.
You're mute. Rudraksh, you're mute.
Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, so it's very interesting that you've pointed this out, that Dubai is like a bouquet of Instagrammable buildings, and it's created its own morphology, like a skyline, which is constantly transforming itself. But if we look at Dubai and we look at what Amin was telling about maybe Delhi, the basic fundamentals of urbanism that we see is that we have something like the Central Vista, we have something like the Connaught Place, we have something like the 7 or 8 large forests within the city, we have the 5 or the 7 district centers, and then everything else is plotted development. And what have we created? I feel plotted development is basically just boundaries. The boundaries of plots which are not communicating with each other.
Absolutely.
And the second level of urbanism that you see in satellite cities like Gurgaon is that you have these mega townships that have been given to private developers, which are these huge gated large communities that might have great sense of urbanism within themselves, but their communication with the city is absolutely missing. So, what would be your comments on this, Ravi? What do you think about that?
Ravi, you are mute too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
My
We
bad,
are all
my bad.
doing
So
this
sorry.
mistake.
I just went into the flow that time you took my
You know,
name.
on a lighter note, ये पहली बार हो रहा है कि आर्किटेक्ट की आवाज नहीं आ रही, वरना
ये
Right,
लॉकडाउन
right,
का
right.
इफेक्ट है.
I think we should. I don't know if it matters, but I think we should unmute ourselves, each one of us, so that it's a natural, organic conversation
Yeah,
that we have.
absolutely.
Definitely,
And
If
actually,
it's,
that's the
that's
entire
okay
point
with
of the
everyone.
discussion, no?
Yeah.
of course, of course. Sir, so I vouch for humanities here. So it's been a very interesting subject right from the time when we were in college. So what is happening here that straight away when we are talking about the areas or the buildings, the glass box buildings was Swapnil was talking about. I call them glass box. So, but of course, even if we talk about Dubai, it is much about planning and design rather than architecture, what is missing there. This is what I feel. Of course, you have iconism, you have volumes there, you have good looking buildings where you can have the Instagram hashtags. But architecture, what we knew right from the beginning was something different. So, okay, going back to humanities is something that I vouch for humans here. That where are the people who are actually going to use it are considered in this. So particularly if we go with the the need of the hour right now about 2040, I think that technology, how if we are talking about public spaces for the public, and right now v6 v5 are the public, and we are not into any a physical conference room or a auditorium, but we are happy in our room, and we are connected virtually. So technology is the upcoming a parameter for such public spaces. I did this somewhere in an article like 1 or 2 years back that China is coming up with some hybrid spaces. So all the people who are up with their mobiles in their hand, they have a dedicated lane to walk, and the one who are, let's say, the normal human beings, have some different public areas for their usage. So this is how the smartness and technology is actually getting into the creation of new public spaces, uh, ultimately leading to public environment and public building, whatever. So this is how I look onto the the evolution or the futuristic view for
Hmm.
urban design or planning or the spaces for people.